At the start of episode 12, most of Duke of Windermere's armies who are stationed in Lithuanian border have arrived in the proximity of Londinium. Unfortunately, her army is the first to get a taste of the Sarkaz' new weapon. One of the Duke's battleships got destroyed by the airship's cannon, leaving no survivor. Furthermore, the Sarkaz has separated Norport Borough from the main city, for it to become their forward operating base in the upcoming war, and for the airship to dock temporarily. It's also implied the Sarkaz are doing this to bait the Grand Dukes to get close to the district. Meanwhile, we see the Duke of Castor talking with her subordinate. The Grand Dukes have now fixed their eyes upon the technology behind the airship in Norport, and to her surprise, Windermere is also keen on Norport affairs. Here it's also revealed that Castor is the late Victorian king cousin. So that means she's Siege-known close relative, but it doesn't look like she will support Siege and her group in any way. Moving on, we see the situation in Norport. The district has been isolated. No one can go in or out. And there are many of those who lived outside the district forced to get here before the separation, resulting in the district getting overcrowded, with no supplies allowed to be given to the civilians and no law enforcer. Sooner or later, the district will become Children of Ursus 2.0. We then see some civilians who try to talk terms with a Sarkaz merc. Ironically, they still believe Londinium defense forces under Leto are on their side. The Sarkaz then had enough and killed some of the civilians. A scholar managed to escape, but now he's wounded and wandering in the street, unable to return to his home. Then a girl called Baird, the only Glasgow gang who remained here instead of going with Siege and the others, take the man to her gym to treat his wound. In the Glasgow gym, we see other newly joined members, a bulky Victorian roadman called Cador, and a petite girl called Delphine, who looks somewhat quite distinctive from other members. Cador says with the current situation they need to save supplies, and so he wants the scholar to leave the place. But seeing the hopeless man, they eventually let him stay as long as he helps. The story shifts to Golding and Molly, since Golding has been closely observed by the enemy. She asked Molly to pass information to help the Self-Salvation Corps, but Golding hasn't realized that this Molly is one of the Damazdi fragments. With the information from Golding, the Sarkaz manages to sniff out the Corps bases and safe houses. Golding eventually found out that the Corps is in danger, so she goes to Leto to buy the Corps some time. We then see all the familiar faces in the Corps HQ. Supreme Leader Amiya talked to the doctor about her nightmare. That could possibly be a bad future for Victoria that the collective souls of the Sarkaz foresaw. But the doctor assures her it's just a dream, and she is exhausted. Later, Ascalon approaches the two, with the news of Kaltsit still in a bad shape. They then meet the others in a meeting. The morale is at an all-time low, because the Sarkaz got a new superweapon. Allerdale's disappearance left their logistics in shambles, and the so-called legendary sword they fought hard to retrieve doesn't seem to do anything special at the moment. But the good news is that with the data they receive from the defense forces, they managed to figure out the starting point of Sarkaz supply lines. One of the endpoints will surely lead to the bottom of the Shard. With war broken out, the guards in the Shard will certainly be reduced, and they will use this chance to infiltrate and kill the big boss himself. Ascalon said it would take less than half a month to figure out the details and start the operation. So Siege requests that she and her gang leave and go to Norport to save Baird and possibly sniff out the mysterious Duke soldiers, who seems to have observed them. But not long after, they got a report that the Corps safe house had been attacked simultaneously, and then the base is also being attacked by a great number of Sarkaz soldiers. It's a losing fight, and with no other place to go in the city, the doctor suggests the Corps evacuate from the city for the time being. Clovesia agreed, and the partisan is split into 3 different groups. Most of the combatants will resist the attack. The doctor's team will take care of the remaining pursuers. while Closure Team will lead the injured and the non-combatant. Shifting to Golding, upon her meeting with Leto, the Corps had already been attacked, and Leto revealed it was the Damazdi who disguised as Molly who leaked the information. Golding is devastated upon knowing she's responsible for the possible death of so many people. She blames herself, and is left with severe guilt and sorrow. Back again to the Corps, Doctor's team is taking care of the pursuers, but there's too many of them and they're elite soldiers, so they must retreat. Then out of nowhere, a mysterious voice leads them to a safe place. The mysterious guy is a member of Trilby Asher, the Duke of Castor elite agent who ordered Allie to retrieve the Size of Kings, and already fought with Siege in the mausoleum. So you bet the group is not very fond of seeing this guy. He demands Siege to hand over the sword, saying that Castor has technologies to put the sword to good use and will use it as a symbol of unity. But Siege refuses. She knows Castor will use it for her own benefit, and those who aren't on her side will be ignored and end up getting killed. As things about to get ugly, Ines, who has been secretly under Ascalon's orders, reveals herself. With the information she gathered about Castor Intelligence Network in the city, she threatened the agent. So it left Mr. Shelby right here to make a deal with them. He knew that they wanted to save a friend in Norport, so he will help them get there through a safe route. But in exchange, he wants the group to infiltrate the airship in Norport and obtain its schematics. Moreover, if the group agrees, they will get Castor's protection, and all of their associates, including those stationed on the landship, will get to live longer. With no better choice, and the agents can help them get to Norport more easily, the group accepts the deal. Shifting to the other group, the evacuation is about to finish, and Logos notices the fake Molly and decides to split up with the group to take care of the slime problem. It's revealed that Logos has been eliminating 30 fragments of the Damazdi who disguised as Molly. But the fake Molly just keeps appearing again. So this time, Logos decides to listen to what the Damazdi had to say. Meanwhile, we see most of the Corps members are preparing for evacuation through a passage from a factory. But then somebody sealed the exit and entrance of the passageway, trapping most inside, while Catherine, Clovesia, and some workers are still at the entrance. Feist realized it was some of his fellow factory workers who sealed the doors. They are afraid of fighting, and siding with the Corps could lead to a big problem. They rather sit down and hope the Grand Dukes will rescue Londinium. And now they want to hand over the Corps member to the defense forces, or at least their leader, but they didn't realize Clovesia managed to escape. As for the group that got trapped, they can easily destroy the doors with explosives and such, but it will draw the Sarkaz attention. Then all of a sudden, W appears and blows the exit with explosives. Now all of Victoria knows where they are, and they must double time to her hideout, leaving Catherine and Clovesia behind. Meanwhile, Horn, Misery, and some others are still fighting the enemy somewhere else, as they are about to get overwhelmed. The last Steam Knight appears, and distracting enemy soldiers. The Victorian soldiers who see this are in awe. But first, they must use this chance to escape and link up with Closure's group. Shifting to the situation in Norport, all hell breaks loose. After several days of separation, no way to communicate with the outside, little supplies and overcrowding, the people begin fighting each other for food. Stores and such have been ransacked, and there are dead bodies everywhere. Worse, the infected corpses rapidly spreading originium dust in the district. As for the Glasgow, we see Baird and Delphine having a conversation. They only have supplies for at most a week, so Delphine suggests they should get help from Duke Windermere's barrack that is presumably in the district. But Baird said with the airship now here, the Dukes probably focus more towards it. They then try to boost the mood a little by talking about the time they spend watching movies in McLaren's video store. But they soon interrupted when they noticed the scholar had been stealing food. The man who is used to a comfortable life can't take this situation anymore. But the exhausted Baird just ordered the man to leave and take the food with him. Sometime later, we see Doctor's team minus Ascalon arrive at Norport with Trilby Asher's help. He reminds them about their primary objective, and he doesn't care what other business they do. But of course, as long as it's not against Duke Castor's will. As the group walked in the street, they noticed the situation in Norport had gone to hell. They then help a wounded and malnourished guy, but they're noticed by other civilians, and some desperately begin to attack them to steal their supplies. Luckily, Baird found them and lead them back to the Glasgow hideout. Meanwhile, on the Sarkaz side, Paprika is stationed in Norport and has been secretly giving supplies to a Victorian-born Sarkaz in the district, named Colbert. But she is soon found out by Manfred. However, the general doesn't punish her, and instead tells her to continue, since they cannot let the people inside die of starvation yet, as they are some kind of insurance that some dukes won't bombard the district. Back again to our protagonists. The original Glasgow reminisces about the past. The gang has finally returned to their home, but with the current situation, it's not as joyful as they thought it would be. Tomorrow morning, Amiya reminds the group about their objective, obtaining what Castor wants and evacuating the civilians from the district. But there's way too many people, and they would need outside help. But the city communication has been cut off, and some dukes are using this as a facade that Norport hasn't gone to hell, until either one of them get intel on the airship. Then Delphine suggests they pressure the Duke to launch a rescue. She is certain that some dukes, notably Windermere, don't want a piece of Victoria to fall into chaos and will step up to rescue. She also knows the location of a comms station that is still working in a certain hotel, but using the unencrypted comms would also lead the Sarkaz to their position. Inez suggests they should do it. If one or two dukes do get here, it would be useful, even if they're not exactly here to rescue the civilians. They can use that as a distraction to locate the airship easier, or use it as a distraction while they evacuate the people. So the whole group agrees with the plan, except for Kador, who refused to get help from any noble. But as Delphine and Kador argue, there's a commotion outside. Somebody just tossed a hotel trolley full of supplies, and the desperate people who saw this immediately rush in to fight for it. The group then tries to stop the fighting, since not only it is bad, but uniting the people is important for their rescue plan later. Amidst the unstoppable chaos, Morgan decided to reveal Siege's royal identity to all the people present, and Delphine play along, ensuring them that the dukes will soon help them out. Hearing that, the spark of hope begin to appear in everyone's heart. Believing Siege will help them, they eventually stop fighting. But upon this revelation, Kador begin to distrust and dislike Siege. Story shift to W and others who are now evacuating the city. While driving the car, W can't stop making fun of the injured Kaltsit. And W also tells Shining that a woman, most likely Nightingale, is already at her hideout. After they arrive, most set up a barracks in the courtyard, while Cal is inside with W at her side. After the big lady awakens, she asks W about the current situation. Then Cal, well, you can say, she goes heart to heart with W. She reflects on her longevity and expresses that she is exhausted. For many years, she and her past self has been trying to prevent Terra from a complete chaos. Not all of the choices she made are optimal, and some might be even immoral, such as how she is one of the reasons for Kazdel's destruction. Cal says Kazdel, home of the Sarkaz, will be rebuilt, but what it will be rebuilt upon depends on the Sarkaz themselves, and perhaps the newer Sarkaz generation like W will have a different answer. Back to Norport, the group split up to get the comment station, while the rest will gather refugees and figure out the best exit. It's revealed the hotel owner is Colbert, and there's his employee named Percival. Colbert is also the one who tosses out the supplies from before to help the others. not knowing it will end up in a very chaotic way. They are then approached by the gang and reveal their plan to use the comms in this hotel. But before they can proceed, Inez feels somebody else is in the room. With the help of her illusion arts, Inez takes Delphine somewhere, while the doctor talks to the mysterious guest, who is none other than the Trilby Asher. In the other room, Inez reveals that the group already knew she is the daughter of Duke Windermere, and asks what is the princess's plan. But she says she and the Duke have no ill intent. Her job here is indeed as some kind of intel gatherer, but her presence in Norport is nothing but a coincidence. And while she might have joined Glasgow to learn about siege, she also thinks of Glasgow as a friend. Then Inez tells her that Rhodes Island want Duke of Windermere's help to break free from Castor's control and do something with the people in Norport, especially after they are done evacuating, as Windermere seems to be the most reasonable duke at the moment. Back to the doctor and Trilby Asher. He says that revealing Siege royal identity was a big mistake. Plus, he's curious about Windermere's daughter that they have found. Inez shortly comes in and tells that Delphine accepts the deal. But all of a sudden, the brigadier with some Dublin soldier comes in. They're also here for the airship, eyeing Castor's men and taking Delphine. But with a nest distraction, Delphine is already on her way to the comms station. They engage in a brief fight. But after Amia arrives to see if the group is okay, the Dublin moved out to take care of other tasks. As it seems, Wellington doesn't want to make a full enemy of Rhodes Island or Amia yet, and Delphine is already gone. As for Delphine, upon arriving at her destination, she sees many Dublin soldiers killed by a blade and burns wounds. But more surprisingly, someone has already took the comms station very long time ago. Delphine goes back to the group to tell them about this, now that the plan to contact the Duke's forces failed. Trilby Asher offered the previous deal to infiltrate the airship. The group can do nothing but accept it, but the doctor also wants Inez to use this chance to signal the outside world using her arts while she's aboard the airship. Inez says she can try doing it at sunrise, so they prepare to infiltrate the airship. After they leave, it's only Colbert left in the hotel, while Percival mysteriously disappears. And shortly, Colbert burns the whole place down. And on the other side, Manfred is influencing Paprika that only hatred could unite the Sarkaz. Teresa once tried a more peaceful and longer approach, but it didn't work. Then they see the fire from the hotel. Manfred reveals it is a signal for the Sarkaz, presumably signaling that Castor and Wellington's men are already here, and implying that Colbert is working for the military commission. Then we see Delphine now in Glasgow Gym. She tells the rest about their current situation and mission. Castor and Wellington's army are now in Norport, and the district has become the Duke's fighting arena. And about the plan that Inez will signal the Duke's army. Assuming Inez's signal work, Duke Windermere army should be approaching Norport shortly, and they can escape. So now they plan to gather as many people as possible to escape through a thin Sarkaz defense perimeter. Meanwhile, we see Halderer imprisoned by Manfred, and as the guard changed his shift, he heard a familiar footsteps approaching. Shifting to Doctor's group, the Trilby Asher has found the airship, but the Sarkaz witchcraft makes it impossible to infiltrate. So knowing Amia is a Sarkaz king, they want Amia to find a way. As they enter the ship, Ascalon appears and takes down one of the fancy pants. But Amia and Ascalon suddenly feel uncomfortable. A mysterious shadow looms across the airship structures. Ascalon then realizes that this ship is powered or born out of the collective Sarkaz dead souls called the Revenant. And there's no way any Duke can replicate this technology. Then the Revenant begins to talk. Those boomer Sarkaz souls lament the loss of Kazdel and their downfall as the most powerful and only race once in Terra. And here we got a solid confirmation that the Sancta was once part of the Sarkaz race, but for an unknown reason and how, the Sancta betrayed them. This more or less explains the animosity between the two races, and why a fallen sancta has Sarkaz characteristics. The Revenant believe that the Sarkaz king will lead them and slay their foes. But the Revenant is flabbergasted, knowing that the current king is not even a Sarkaz. Also refuse the path of hatred and war that could only unite them. So they refuse to acknowledge Amiya as a Sarkaz king, calling her fake king and such. Then shortly, Iblana with her Dublin soldiers appear, and she begins using her flame against the shadow in the ship. Knowing she's way too powerful, the group retreat from the airship. Then out of nowhere, Iblana is approached by Colbert, but Iblana immediately uses her flame against him, revealing that Colbert is one of the Damazdi fragments in disguise. Meanwhile, Glasgow and the refugees can see the airship taking off. At the same time, Iblana is casting her arts. It engulfed some part of the district and killed some of the civilians. But those who got killed by the fire soon rise and become the undead controlled by Iblana to fight the Damazdi. Doctor's group then rendezvous with Glasgow and the refugee. But as the group about to proceed escaping, Baird is nowhere to be seen. According to Morgan, she went to get McLaren, the owner of the video store mentioned earlier. But in the scene with Baird trying to save the man, McLaren has gone deaf, infected, and losing his mind. Not realizing that Baird is trying to help, he stabbed her with her own knife, and Baird ends up losing too much blood. On her last breath, she saw the familiar scholar dead in the middle of the street. It seems he has been killed by some people who are trying to take his food. Baird then reads the scholar's note. He seems to be a good fella, if not rather narcissistic. But after reading the note, Baird closes her eyes for the last time. Back to the protagonist group, they notice McLaren is among the refugees, and he's holding Baird's knife that is covered in blood. With the current situation, they can only deduce that Baird was killed, but they must focus with the current task. Then all of the people come together to destroy the Sarkaz wall that isolated the district. Luckily enough, it has been already abandoned, and the people manage to get away from the district. On the other side, after several days of suffering from sorrow and guilt, Golding has chosen to give up on living, and it implies that she asked the Damazdi to end her life, and so the Damazdi agree and stays at her final moment and takes her form, to better understand her feelings and what drives her to do this. Shifting to the airship, it's almost daybreak, and it's revealed Inez manages to infiltrate the ship and has taken Paprika captive. But soon she is caught by Manfred. Here, Inez sees that fleets of Grand Duke's battleships are approaching Norport. Inez realizes the airship has been flying slowly to get the Duke's attention, who wanted the airship technology. As if it gets behind Londinium walls, it will be quite impossible to get. Some representatives of the Dukes are also already in Norport. Inez deduces that the Sarkaz plan for everyone to gather, and then they can take them all down in an instance with the Shard Storm. If it happens, not only it will severely damage the Duke's forces, but with the Duke's internal strife, it can lead to them blaming each other for the attack, further weaken Victoria's defense, and make it easier for other countries to take advantage of. There needs to be a slight change in plan. Inez swiftly escaped from the Sarkaz, but not the shadows of the dead Sarkaz souls. She then breaks the airship window and free-falling onto the ground. With the new Sarkaz plan she learned, Inez signals the Dukes about the danger they're facing. At this height, she can see Norport's shadow and manipulate it, stretching it out as far as she can see. And the district shadows now resemble the Shard, hoping for any Dukes will get the message. But now is the question of how the hell she's going to survive the fall. Luckily, W knew about the plan and Inez's position from a tracker. W also rescued Hoderer from prison, and now they work together to cushion Inez's fall. The method is quite crazy. W fires her explosives into the air, resulting in a shock wave. followed by some kind of embers from Hoderer Arts. It manages to cushion Ines' fall, though the fall and supposedly the explosion injured her a bit. The Merc X family trio have finally reunited, and then they all go to W's hideout. Shifting to Duke of Windermere on her battleship. From her dialogue, it looks like she's the only Duke who has no other agenda than protecting Victoria and saving her daughter. She has no interest in the airship and only advances to bring Delphine home. But then she notices that Norport's shadow is changing, now resembling the Shard. She can't help but feel something terrible is about to happen. And after confirming the Grand Dukes of Victoria's fleet will be converging near Norport soon, she realizes this is a bait. So Windermere ordered a full stop and clear off from Norport to all of her troops, and inform other dukes about the danger. But she ordered this one ship to not stop moving to Norport in order to save Delphine. As for the doctors group and the refugees, they managed to escape the district and are now in the wasteland. As for Glasgow, they still lament Baird's death, and Siege is blaming herself, for her return has caused Ali and Baird's death. And she's confused what was the point of coming back to Victoria, but Morgan assures her this is not her fault, and it's not her responsibility to shoulder alone. Then, out of nowhere, the Damasti fragment who fought with Eblana appears and approaches Amia. The Damasti find her interesting. Not only Amia is young and a non-Sarkaz king, but she also refuses to lead the Sarkaz to a path of war. And so after their brief discussion, the Damasti decided to fight Amia and the others, to see if the current king and her companion can give them a surprise. Sometime later, we see the Damasti fragment who is with Logos. The Damasti have been retelling their experience and their influence from many years ago in many different places. The Damasti cluster are some kind of immortal being. They have been living for a long time, yet they haven't found any worthy goal or excitement, and have been always trying to find the meaning for their life. Then Damasti tells Logos that one of their fragment has encountered Amia and has been defeated. Damasti noted that Amia's presence does make things interesting in their dull life, and so they are waiting for what Amia offers in the future. But as the Damasti was about to leave, Logos mentioned there is an uncharted area that the Damasti haven't tried yet, and that is death. So he quite literally tells the Damasti to kill themselves. Quite surprisingly, the Damasti do find it interesting. Then the Damasti choose to end their lives. The whole fragments of the Damasti cluster decayed, including the one who was fighting Amia. Then some people hear the sound of Logos's bone whistle. He announced the death of the Damasti cluster and that there will come new life. Teresis and Cal also heard this. According to them, 2 new Damasti are already reborn into this world, and also described by Teresis as splitting into halves from their original form. Later, we see the whole gang and refugees at Duke Windermere's ship, except for Kador, who choose to leave, as he doesn't like to get any help from nobility. Windermere thanked the group for rescuing many people from Norport and for saving Delphine. They are all welcome to stay in her land for the time being, and says protecting the people of Victoria is what a duke ought to do. Dagda cuts in and asks what's her opinion on the Steam Knight, as she is one of those who are responsible for their relocation and their demise. Windermere says it is something she must do, but doesn't deny she is also at fault. Now Windermere agrees to become a Rhodes Island supporter, and they will talk about their next plan, about Siege, and the Realm Blade once they're in a safe place. Sometime later, we can see the Nachsera king and his army, marching to fight the Grand Dukes. We also see Duke Wellington and Eblana. The Duke is excited about the battle to come, and promised to secure a future for Eblana and the Terran. It seems he also ordered his men to make a gap in their line, so the enemy can easily get inside Windermere's territory. And according to Eblana, it seems the Sarkaz haven't fully mastered the Shard's true potential, or are waiting better opportunity. The story shift to Teresa and the Lich's Sarkaz messenger, Ermengarde. Despite the Lich King initial refusal to visit Londinium, he eventually sent his royal messenger, although it's not clear if he gave his blessing. Here we also know that the Liches are a rather peaceful bunch, who prefer preserving arts knowledge and spending time in libraries. Teresa also mentioned they are the masters of space manipulation. Ermengarde mentioned she was visited by Kaltseat on her way to the city, who tried to persuade the Liches not to take sides with the Sarkaz royal court. But Ermengarde said the Liches didn't make any promise to Kal, nor do they make any promise to the royal court. However, the Liches did send an unknown gift that could be useful for the Sarkaz soldiers on the front line. We then see the new and good reunion, getting ready to enter Londinium. Here we also know that Percival is a reunion member and has been infiltrating Norport with Red to gain intel and save most of the infected. She is also responsible for moving the comm station in the hotel for reunion to use. And Tallulah heard from Percival about Eblana, the other Draco beside her, and is prepared for whatever comes next. Well, fellas, that is all for episode 12. Hope this helps you to understand the story. That should be all. Adios.